Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Magical Witchy World. I am Star Ravenhawk, and my partner in crime, Rhonda Allen, is away tonight, but she welcomes you all. And be welcoming tonight with us, David Shee. Hold on, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, David. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here. Have you here. Great, great, great. Well, before we begin our show with David and going into all our questions, we want to go over what introduced you to David and all that he is, okay? So, David Shee is a shamanic worker and folk magic practitioner who primarily engages in traditional North Asian forms of shamanism. He is primarily of Manchurian descent but can also trace ancestry to Mongolian, Chinese, Korean, as well as a Little Tungus Siberian and ancient Central Asian Turkic heritage as well. Raised in a household that incorporated both Southeast Siberian and North Chinese practices, David has dedicated his spare time to the study of the spiritual traditions of his ancestors and of Greater Eurasia. Recognized as a Sagasha, Angan Tengate, a future shaman prior to initiation among both Mongolian and Korean shamans, David's practices are deeply rooted in spirit work in which ancestral spirits and land spirits are called to empower all workings. David's readings incorporate a combination of tarot, bones, jaw harp, as well as Mongolian stone divination, known as Kumulak in Turkic Central Asia. David is the author of the book Spirit Voices: The Mysteries and Magic of North Asian Shamanism, available now through Wiser Books. David currently resides in Manhattan, New York, where he occasionally provides spiritual services, products, and workshops to his immediate communities. And we will tell you further how to contact David after. So, David, welcome and thank you for being with us here tonight.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here as well.
Mhm,
So, some of the questions we wanted to ask you in general
mhm,
was, we kind of know that people go through a journey in their life of, where they start out and where they end up at. So, and
mhm.
sometimes you may call yourself different names or traditions or different things. So, we want to
Mhm.
kind of have you take us there from that, where you started out with what name you are and what you've decided to call yourself presently.
Sure. So I guess my spiritual journey, in other words, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's in, first of all, I do want to emphasize that I was born and raised in the US, so like everyone else, growing up, it's I had a little bit of exposure to my cultural and ancestral heritage as well as exposure to just what was going on, around me here in the US. And so for me growing up, I like many people within, the spiritual world or the witchcraft worlds, you like growing up, you do have a sense of there's something else out there. There are spirits and energies and deities out there, and then there's magic out there, and then there is this drive, this calling to practice that, or to employ that in some kind. And I think
Yeah,
this is same for many of us.
right.
But where things kind of got interesting for me is that it's obviously I kind of worked with what I have here, and so much of my early journey did start out with what we know as neo-paganism, witchcraft, Wicca. This was what I found
Right, right, right.
here,
Yeah.
and I learned a lot, studied a lot, and it definitely helped me a lot. But over time, as I start doing a spiritual practice, the thing with my ancestors is that they do come pretty heavily in dreams, especially in the beginning. They're
Right,
like, we like that you're interested in this topic, but you should start looking in a particular direction.
right.
um and at the same time, as I was going to public witchcraft or Wiccan rituals and circles, the funny thing is every time I approached the deities that were worked with, the gods and goddesses that I worked with, there would
Yeah.
a lot of the times there would be a consistent message going like, thank, where even I can actually name like like Hecate has expressed this to me, Bridget has expressed this to me, they would be saying to me, thank you for being here. It's great that you're here, but
Right.
there is something else that you should be doing.
Right. Right.
And so I was welcomed as a guest, but as I explored what my ancestors were trying to tell me, they were saying, okay, you should explore, you should explore us, our history, our people, and eventually it was, you should explore our spirituality, what we did for our shamanism. And that even includes what our neighbors did. So what obviously were the Chinese doing, what were the Koreans doing, what were the Mongolians doing, what were the Siberians doing, the direct neighbors. So,
Right. Right.
so as things went on, what I started becoming is, I call myself a shamanic worker, mainly because within the North Asian traditions, we do have a concept of initiation before one is empowered and to be able to do a deep level of shamanic work. I have received many teachings from teachers and elders throughout Mongolia, even Korea and Siberia, but they're within.
David, I'm sorry. Could you give me one moment, please?
Sure.
Darian, I cannot do this right now with you. I really cannot. I can't live with kids. Just give me a moment. My son has
Yeah,
to pass behind me. I apologize
no
greatly.
worries.
Anyways, and he has to pass back in a minute. So in the
Sure.
meantime, we will go ahead. I apologize so profusely. Okay. Apologies. Okay, go ahead.
No worries. So there we do have a concept of initiation that must be done very carefully, and that we do have to find a specific teacher from a specific lineage to do that. And that's the process that I'm still, even though I've met many elders and many shamans within those areas, that there has to be a very specific compatibility. And if that compatibility is not there in any way, initiation cannot happen, but they can still give me some level of teachings and some levels of practices and even empowerments while I am searching. So I'm currently in this interesting state right now. People can call me shaman if they want, because I do a certain level of shamanic work that is appropriate for me to do, but I consider myself a shamanic worker, or as we use the term sagasha or ongo tengerte.
Okay.
I do that level of work, but being someone who was raised in America, being someone who has been trained by people from, Wicca, from witchcraft, even from, the hoodoo communities there, a lot of, even to the point where my own ancestral spirits encouraged me to learn the other spiritualities that exist around me, because I was born and raised in the US and I'm dealing with spirits and entities that are here. My practice is a very much a foundationally still based off of what my ancestors have practiced in terms of their shamanic work, but a lot of also what I do and for myself, in terms of magical workings, are very much inspired by practices from Western witchcraft, from hoodoo, from the teachings that I've learned from teachers who are based here.
Right, right. So, in
Yeah,
other words, you picked up a lot of things, especially because when you're born in America, you're exposed to a lot of different things,
exactly.
which is good, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a way, you kind of, I'm going to segue into, what brought you to the world of. So, wait, first of all, you didn't really define. I guess you did. You said shamanic practitioner, correct?
Or shamanic worker is, yeah.
Or shamanic worker.
Yeah.
Okay, so what brought you to that world entirely?
Well, within our traditions, we actually have a concept where if someone is supposed to be a shaman, they're actually chosen by their ancestral spirits to be a shaman. And within our tradition, it's a little bit of an interesting concept. It might be strange for a lot of people here in the U.S. or even in Europe, but we almost don't have a choice in that. The reason why we are chosen to become shamans is because we have specific ancestors who themselves were shamans, and then they become shamanic spirits. They choose specific individuals within uh somehow connected to their lineage, and when someone is chosen, they have to approach this path in order to lead a fulfilling life. So that in
Mm,
that case, this was something that was identified with me. I always had an interest in spiritual and shamanic work. I had no idea why. If you read up on any books or any materials about shamanic sickness, it just sounds like the most terrible thing in the world. Why would I ever want that? But the way that I started to realize is when my ancestors were approaching me within my dreams or within other ways, leading me in the direction, it was basically them uh, pushing me in this direction because this was what I was supposed to do.
mhm.
So for us, I would say it's slightly different from witchcraft in that witchcraft is a calling as well. But one thing about witchcraft is that as you progress, you become more empowered in the sense that you get more sovereignty over your practice, and you get a lot more empowerment over what you do, and you build a relationship with gods and goddesses and spirits. Whereas in shamanism, it's not in traditional shamanism, especially in North Asia, it's because you are born with an already existing sort of obligatory relationship with your specific ancestral spirits.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
becomes something you inherit and something you have to do. So in some ways, the way that I sometimes envy witches a little bit is that we don't have the same amounts of of I would say sovereignty, or basically I don't want to say the words free will, but it's, in a way, our spirits kind of boss us around a little bit.
okay, all right. I can
So
I've seen that because I've observed native traditions
mm,
in Canada that's very
yeah,
similar to what you're telling me because I'm
especially
Canadian.
northwestern Canada,
So right, so
especially.
I've
Yeah,
physically seen what you're talking about and
yeah.
what their traditions are, and it sounds very similar to the natives there that I know.
Mm,
Um, and and a lot of it is to me similar to voodoo or something like that. So
mm,
you know, again, I'm an observer of many things.
yeah.
So okay, so that sounds great. So from your point of view, what does it mean to be that type of worker?
So what it means is that there.
Wait, before you clarify, not from other people's point of view, but
Okay.
your personal point of view of
Okay.
how it takes you. So that way it's a more of a personal thing as to how does it deviate a bit maybe for you
Mm,
slightly from the norm or from everybody else, because no matter what, even in shamanic practices, you are called to something, but how it deals with you is based on you as a person. So
right.
okay, so
So it's interesting that you say that. I mean, what the way that I was going to answer, and I'm going to tweak the answer a little bit to make it more personal, is a, a lot of it is dealing is an implied responsibility for maintaining coexistence and balance, not only just within the community but also within ourselves, and basically being preserving a coexistent relationship with the spirits that are around us, the land spirits, the ancestor spirits. But then what that also brings in is even though I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of responsibility and obligation, almost like a lack of choice,
mm,
fulfilling that practice does bring a sense of, I'll use the word again, fulfillment within your own personal life. What I found is even the majority, I would say probably 80% of what I do is mostly giving offerings and doing cleansings. And from that practice, as well as building that relationship and building the skill set to maintain those relationships, often in a way it almost creates a charmed life in that it does allow things in life um to manifest a little bit better because you have those relationships with those spirits that are constantly supporting you, to the point where I actually found that the deeper that I got into my practice, the less quote unquote spell work I have to do in terms of very specific spells for this or for that, because as my shamanic practices got deeper, my relationships got deeper. If there was things that I needed in my life, I don't necessarily need to do the same heavy spell work that I used to do to get those. Whereas I can if we're talking about, spell work to bring up to manifest things, I can use that for more complicated issues as opposed to more some of the more simple issues in my life. So if to the point where it's almost like saying you got an entourage behind you that's got your back.
Okay.
Um, and
Which
and
makes
so
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and so what I found is as my practices deepens, things tend to fall in line in ways that I did not expect, which even comes down to things for my day to day, like my day job and salaries, like those. Like as I do a lot of practices, things actually physically do get better, both mentally and physically get better in my life. My health, general health improved, my mental state and my emotional state does improve. So these are kind of some of the very unexpected things that came about through practice, and then
Mm.
by doing additional spiritual practice, it's more of just refining the things that I would like to happen in my life, because there's no need to start from scratch. Like if I wanted to, you know let's just make an example of, get a better job, or do a prosperity work. I don't have to start from scratch. It's just refining what's already there.
Okay. So actually that kind of takes me into um asking you how how do you integrate that into your lifestyle as it's not necessarily a magical practice, but how does it become part of your, like, symbiotically in a way, into your lifestyle, so that you don't have to think about it, it's just part of your whole date, you know what I mean, that kind of a
Hmm.
thing. How does that go? And quickly wanted to say hi to everyone in the chat for being here. They're saying hi to everyone.
Mm.
And thank you for being here. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So, um, it's an interesting question, because part of maintaining spiritual relationships, much like maintaining interpersonal relationships, is in your day-to-day life you have to take some effort to handle that, to make sure all parties are happy, whether it's offerings and such. But in my day-to-day, it can get to the point where if I'm just working in my day job, and I need a little bit of energy in my life, I can just like sometimes it'll just be saying a quick prayer over my coffee, and that will do other things. Sometimes it's putting a little bit of specific herbs within my coffee, and then asking my spirits to empower it. The one thing I mentioned within my or one thing that you mentioned within my bio is a lot of my workings do involve working with ancestral spirits and land spirits to empower all workings. So what
Right.
that means is essentially, if I it's drawing on the powers of the land for my day-to-day stuff, and then by drawing on by having a deep relationship with the powers of the land, the relationship with the ancestors automatically gets stronger. And then
Right.
what I have discovered is I do work with some, because whether it's pre-existing relationships within witchcraft, or from workings that I do within Buddhism, I do work with certain deities and gods and goddesses and the equivalents. And what I have discovered is that by maintaining shamanic relationships, my relationships with these higher powers do get stronger. Within my day to day, I have found that it gets easier uh, if I need spiritual or magical help, whatever. It becomes easier to ask for that help without needing necessarily to do a specific ritual
Right.
to get things to work. One kind of open secrets that we kind of have, almost like a formula, is that in the land spirits help us connect to our ancestors better, and connecting to our ancestors help us connect to higher powers and deities and gods and goddesses better. So it's almost like different tiers. They're almost like the in between bridges.
Right.
So what I have discovered is that within my day to day, it's being conscious of the fact that there are constantly spirits around us. Of course, there we ancestral spirits, our ancestors are always with us. There are land spirits everywhere around us.
Right. Right.
that we are conscious of, and that informs, in many ways that informs the way that I walk and talk.
Right,
Just
right.
being, it's not, even though we can try to quote unquote shut things out, like I'm doing work, I can't be thinking about that right now, they're still there. And just being conscious of the fact that you might not be doing spiritual work, but they're there, maybe just chilling. And just, so it brings about a lot of that awareness. And in some ways it also means making sure you don't do things that offend them, which could be like littering, or general
Yeah,
pollution,
yeah.
or even and even just having more control over your own mind and emotions, because
Right,
sometimes when you are in a troubled state, that actually does have ripple effects.
right.
So just being more conscious and more mindful of that, that's kind of, I think that ties a lot to of other spiritual traditions, where they actually do say that if you express out a certain emotion or a certain state of mind, that's what comes back to you, because that is what you're filling the room with.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So what are some of the things, I'm going to kind of take you in another trajectory.
sure.
What are some of the things that's become important to you with all of the work that you're doing?
So what's become very important to me is, actually, one thing that I'm going to say is very important to me is maintaining spiritual hygiene. Because
Okay.
one thing that I think, one big aspect of this is making sure that, in addition to being physically clean and showering, every day or every couple of days, is also making sure that your own soul and your own spiritual presence is being cleansed as well. And I think this is something that I mean, obviously non-spiritual practitioners, I think they need to definitely do it, because there's, over time, gunk builds up, whether it's physical gunk or spiritual gunk. And oh, and what oftentimes I see most of the time when people come to me and they say that they think they're cursed, or they think everything going badly in life is that everything in life is going badly for them, I'm just there thinking like, well, when was the last time you did a cleansing? Because from where I am, it's it's I get the sense that the spiritual sense that they're a little bit dirty,
Oh,
and they
okay.
need to
All
cleanse them. So what I off so oftentimes that's kind of enough to help people improve their lives. And I think that's something that I've seen both for myself and for other people, making sure that you are properly cleansed on a regular basis. I mean, if it's kind of thing where if you miss a shower a couple days, it's not a big deal, but over time it
Yeah, it
develops
takes
into
its toll.
something else.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same thing for spiritual cleansing. And part of the, and when I say spiritual cleansing, I mean it in two parts. One is you're obviously cleansing, when you do, like, for example, like a smoke cleansing. I know a lot of witches, sage or something similar is pretty popular. That does cleanse sort of the spiritual presence around your body. But I also would recommend, if you want to cleanse internally as well, doing a type of meditative practice actually helps to flush things out from the inside,
Right,
as well.
right.
So this is, so in
Well,
terms of
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's a good idea.
yeah,
Actually, with me, I have a tendency to do, there's an herbal cleanse that I tell people they should do anyways, whether
mm,
it's, monthly or whatever else. I think that's a big deal. Anyway, so
yeah.
that's great. So let's talk about you and the community. What
Mm.
have you found within the community, um, that you have found that's been there for you?
One thing that I've found surprising is that everyone is hungry and curious to, everyone, obviously everyone within the community has an interest in spirituality and magic. And what I have found are people, what I really appreciate about the community is that it's not common for people to think that they know everything and there's nothing else to learn. The community has seemed to be in a place where they are always curious to learn more, whether it's within their own traditions or from outside traditions, and
Right,
putting together that and help learning from it to enhance their own practices. And because of that, I'm actually very grateful to the community that it's because of their interest in the work that I do. And I know my traditions is not very common in the US. And because people have approached me with that, you know, that curiosity, that intellectual curiosity, it's made it possible for me to write and publish my book. Because, you know, people, even if it's not a tradition that people are familiar about, they're curious about it, and they want to learn, you know, at least a little bit, you know, to varying degrees. So it's, you know, it's because of this that's, I think, that type of support from the community has helped me a lot, especially, you know, here in the US. And
Right.
ironically, in the times I've gone to Asia, people approach me and ask me questions about things like tarot and, you know, Western astrology as well, because they're not as exposed to these things. So in a way, I found very interestingly that I've become a little bit of a bridge um
Right.
between these traditions. I mean, people there know Eastern astrology very well, but not much about, you know, astrology that's, you know, here. And, you know, when I talk astrology about people here, and then the conversation goes to Eastern astrology, it's there's there there is a lack of knowledge, but people do want to learn more. And
Right. They're
so
open
that
minded. They're open minded, and
exactly, yeah,
that's a good thing.
yeah.
Um, okay. So what would you like to see the magical, I'm not going to say us as witches, but us as magical people accomplish?
So in general, what I would like to see the magical community accomplish is that, you know, it's a not an easy question. um, One thing I've noticed within the magical community is that people come into this community usually because they themselves have struggles and difficulties that they're trying to overcome. And within the magical community, in varying degrees, they're able to find, you know, healing, or they're able to find, you know, solutions out that they normally would not have.
Right.
So I would say, you know, the next step beyond that is, um, I, I would, one thing that I would like definitely to see within the magical community is, you know, more, because it's tough because they already do this, but I'm just saying more in terms of, you know, celebration of, you know, the different spirituality, celebration of, you know,
Right.
the different ways of thinking, and also recognizing that sometimes things do seem like they conflict. Like, for example, one, um, you know, within the magic community and here in the U.S., people are aware of the elements of, you know, earth, air, fire, water. But within much of Asia, there's actually five elements. So it's earth, wood, metal, water, and fire.
Right.
And so what I would and so a lot of people who don't look deeply into this, it might seem like they conflict, or it might seem like they just, you know, how do I match those two together? And it will seem very difficult. And what I would like to see the magical community do more of is they don't necessarily say, oh, it's, you know, too different, I won't think about it too much, but maybe try to engage deeper in conversation with people who seem to have a conflicting point of view on the surface, but see what underlying threads there are. Because
Right.
people, like, I've heard Evo speak about this. The Eastern five elements and the Western four elements, they actually do mash together pretty
I
well.
find
And
them matching, which is I've never heard anyone say. But then, I don't converse with people much about things in that way when I'm teaching.
mhm.
I To me, it all kind of fits. It's what it is. But
It's almost like they
everybody's
don't,
different. Everybody's different in how they see
right.
things. Yeah.
But it's like recognizing things won't fit one to one, but things will probably have some type of weird overlapping that will look weird, but it works out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, what projects do you have coming up, or events within the rest of this year or coming up that you can tell us about? Because we'd love to have that information for people to have them check you out, and then afterwards, we'd love to have you tell us. And I would, because I am not that tech inclined, I don't know how to make it screen across the link for David.
Mm,
So I would let everyone know. His David will let you know what how to get a hold of him, and I will place that on the YouTube video with the link there. Okay, for everyone
sure.
to see it. Okay, so Go ahead, David.
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of so the next few months are actually a little bit slower for me, but I what I haven't done with my book actually yet that just came out this May. I'm just going to show it really quick on the screen. I haven't done a proper sort of book tour yet. So, as time progresses, I'll be doing more, book appearances and book signings.
That's
At
good.
very
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So, I nothing set in stone for the next couple of months yet, but I do
We're
have an
working on that.
Instagram.
We're working
Yeah,
on that. So
working
let
on that.
everyone know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very active on Instagram a lot more than on Facebook these days. So people can find me on Instagram. It's David J Shi 311 DAVIDJ SHI 311. If there's stuff events coming up, I will be posting about it. I'll let people know things what I'm doing. But even when I'm not doing anything, I'll still post interesting content from within the realm of North Asia, and sometimes they'll just be my own travel things as well. So as a huge nerd, I'm actually going to New York Comic Con this weekend. I'm posting things about that just
All
for
right.
just
Yes,
for
I have a
giggles.
friend that's been at Comic Con, and he's like, "Look at me taking pictures," and I'm like, "Oh boy, it's
Yeah, so
tiring." Comic Con is awesome, but very tiring. I cannot go.
yeah, it's
I
exhausting. That's
don't do
for sure.
crowds very well.
It's
Mm-mm. But
yeah.
listen, great, David. We want to thank you so much
Mm,
for being on the show tonight, and we would gladly have you back another time with other things.
thank you.
And it's been a pleasure. Thank you all so much. Okay,
Yeah.
hold on, everyone. All right, everyone. That was so lovely having David Shee with us. Can't wait for him for next time. Okay, so tonight we wanted to finish up. Well, do the two more of the signs, and we're doing tonight Scorpio and Sagittarius, I believe. So we're going to be doing the decans for both of those zodiac signs. So again, we've discussed many times over how about the decans. So in the first one, which is a Scorpio, because there's a lot of information, we can only do two at a time. It's like, two different signs at a time. So the Scorpio Decan 1 are those born October 23rd to November 1st. And they are ruled by Pluto and Mars in both systems. So there's Scorpio triplicity. So the sun drives through this constellation of the herdsman, the ship, the virgin, the cross, and the crown, 0 to 10 degrees Scorpio. So those born in this first decan will present as what is termed typical Scorpios, kind of typecasted as the baddie, and does indeed contain a few malefics. Not surprisingly, since being ruled by Mars, the planet of war. So, creating a bit of paradox since this is the most Scorpio section of Scorpio using the triplicity system. This decan is a sharp weapon, but it doesn't mean that it will always harm, as there are no sidereal in Scorpio decan 1. This decan has two of its major stars residing in the constellation of Crux, giving them the ability to tap into other dimensions, power that can be used for good or ill. The dark or sharp edge of this decan comes from carrying the weight of one having to bear the responsibility of their psychic or prophetic abilities. For Scorpio decan 1, it's either black magic or white magic. They don't do gray, no in between. That's just who they are. Okay? Additional ruling of Pluto, the planet of darkness and mystery, can make them a bit intense, enigmatic, calculating, passionate, and seductive, but they're loyal, steadfast, and dependable. With animal magnetism coming from sexy Mars ruler and Butes, the herdsmen, they will stand by a level long after others in the same situation have let go. But once they let go, there's usually no going back. They are the perfect invisible person and would make a great classic spy because of their amazing ability to construct a psychic cloaking device, silently in the shadows, never detected or noticed until suddenly, bam, there they are, and it's too late, giving them an advantage over their rivals because they are often underestimated. That's a good way to be underestimated. Even though some of them really do have fatal written all over them, they seem to be able to convince people otherwise. They are made of true grit. They often risk life and limb for a cause that they believe in. They also have they also make excellent interrogators, relentlessly probing until they will get an answer. As the sun blazes with a high libido here, the craving for sex is high in this sign, in Decan 1. Because the desires are so strong, they will seek to understand why they have such fierce cravings. In this area, we are now thinking sex slaves, generally nonconformist with a bit of the wild and freaky in their natures. They may be obsessed with sex and or be drawn to sadism, fetishes, dominance, and the equation of pleasure and pain. If their partner does not satisfy them sexually, then these folk can go greedy for glittery, golden luxury material items instead. In Christianity, some of its icons are pretty graphic in their S&M qualities. Saint Sebastian, Saint Teresa, the agony and the ecstasy, self-flagellations, need I say more? Their obsessive behavior can be channeled into devouring information and attaining wisdom. For those who are less evolved, they fall prey to their bestial cravings. Example: BBC children's presenter and knighted DJ Jimmy Savile was a serial child molester, rapist, and sexual predator. So, those who learn to rein in and temper their inner savage become experts in the fields of psychology and can greatly help others with addiction problems. This is what you call the true meaning of taking your weakness and turning it into your biggest strength. That's amazing. So, Scorpio's Decan ones examples will be like Bill Gates, Hillary Clinton, Pablo Picasso, Christopher Columbus, Jimmy Savile, I mentioned him being that child molester, Ivanka Trump, Caitlyn Jenner, Theodore Roosevelt, Katy Perry, Kelly Osbourne, Johnny Carson, Julia Roberts, Winona Ryder, Kevin Kline, Henry Winkler, David Schwimmer, Sarah Bernhardt, Chiron Discovery, Diego Maradona, and David and Victoria Beckham. So those are just a few of them. Okay. So we're moving on to Scorpio Decan 2. That's those that are born November 2nd to 11th. And they are ruled by the Sun, Neptune, and Jupiter. Pisces triplicity. The Sun traverses the constellation of the Southern Cross, the Scales, the Crown, and the Serpent from 10 to 20 degrees Pisces. And here resides the zodiac's James Bonds, the zone of spies, femme fatales, spellbinders, game players, and depth psychologists and occultists. They are selfless, they're daydreamers, romantic, impatient, and moody. They are also poetic, sensitive, and creative, which can lead them to be less grounded and prone to having their head in the clouds. However, this also makes them incredibly artistic and in tune with their creative side. And deep in the restless recesses of their brain, they are making tallies, keeping a scorecard of all the good and bad treatment towards them. In arguments, they can pull out dates and times and even what you were wearing on the day that they were wronged. They will remember. They are the world's best hagglers, making them very skilled merchants, and their business sense is outstanding. Balancing relationships, give and take. If they feel you are taking from them in some way, then energetically Scorpio, the can too, will do something to ensure equality. They really should just come out and say what's upsetting them, but that might reveal too much vulnerability. So instead, they leave their partners to figure out the mystery, thinking you really should be able to read their minds. Yeah. Scorpio the Cantu needs to remember that everyone else, unlike themselves, we are not all seers. Okay? Nostradamus's moon here. Okay, not all of them will have such impressive prophetic abilities, but generally, these folk will have amazingly sharp instinct and intuition. Scorpio the Cantus have the knack of being omnipresent. It feels like they are constantly watching and judging you, like God. They have the great ability to slip between two opposing forces unnoticed. This ability means that they are also very intuitive and, in some cases, also very psychic, as they can tune in the space between awake and asleep. They are people who seek justice and truth. And some of them may take the law into their own hands, but fundamentally they fight for the rights of the disadvantaged. The only problem comes when their own judgment is compromised by, say, maybe a mental illness or addiction problem, um, uh, which can skewer their reasoning. They are natural leaders and arbitrators. It also means they can use logic to mediate their deep and passionate emotions. They will make excellent judges and critics because of their innate ability to weigh up all the odds. Balance is everything with this decan. In business, they do very well, but they are also very fair, which means you got to win them in respect and good reputation. That means a lot to them. The more evolved souls here know deep down that they cannot abuse the power they have, so they possess an innate sense of karma. Those with lower morals can be, you know, I guess what you will call unscrupulous rascals, however, especially if their son is close to Zuben El Gen Nubi. Oh boy, that bastardized that word, right? If the son is close to Zuben El Gan Nubi. These scoundrels usually don't get away with this rotten behavior for long enough. As in the words of John Lennon, instant karma's gonna get you, not gonna knock you off your feet, and they will be knocked off their feet quite dramatically. The lucky ones may experience scandal in their lives, but if they quickly pay back their dues with good behavior and remorse, they usually resurrect themselves without any dire consequences. And examples of this Scorpio 2 decan: Marie Antoinette, Richard Burton, Vivian Leigh, Grace Kelly, Leonardo DiCaprio, Charles Bronson, Hedy Lamarr, Billy Graham, Charles Manson. That's interesting having Billy Graham and Charles Manson in there together, right? Mackenzie Phillips, Tatum O'Neal, Demi Moore, Anne Hathaway, Sally Field, Roy Rogers, Roseanne Barr, Lulu, Adam Ant, Neil Young, Art Garfunkel, Lindy, Marie Curie, Lindy England, George Blake, Dolph Lundgren, Carl Sagan, and Nadia Comaneci. I love her. Anyways, so those are examples of the decan, Scorpio decan 2. So now we moved on to the Scorpio decan 3. Those of you that are born November 12th to the 21st, they are ruled by Venus and the moon, a Cancer triplicity. The sun creeps through the constellation of the fly, the serpent, wolf, chameleon, and centaur from 20 to 30 degrees Cancer. Scorpio Decan 3 contains all the items you would find in the musty, forbidden forest. Every scary story has one. Here we have howling wolves, magic mushrooms, mythical centaurs, psychedelic chameleons, and slithering serpents. What a trip we will take. They are cunning and driven to succeed, which could make them great parents, caretakers, and medical professionals. Scorpios born under the Cancer decan can be incredibly empathic people, but also highly protective of themselves and those they love. These Scorpio decantries are naturally creatures of the night and are accustomed to creeping about so as not to disturb anyone. They are considerate fellows, they just like to blend in and harmonize as the best way to survive. They observe the human jungle as watching by living by instinct. In their mindset, drawing attention to yourself may actually get you eaten. So they tend to hold themselves back and observe instead. They look and learn rather than read books. Scorpio Decan 3s are kind of akin to pack animals. So everything they do is motivated to protect the future of their breed. They make devoted parents and proud tribe leaders. Patience is their absolute forte. They can get through the toughest endurance test known to man. Try to torture them, and they will be the last ones on the rack with no fingernails left. Their resolve is awesome to behold. They are stubborn, immovable, and yes, they are a fixed sign. So, hence, they will stubbornly stay there with that. They are more sensitive, intuitive, and emotional than their typical Scorpio counterparts. Being ruled by passionate Venus and the emotional moon, there is the little matter of sex obsession and jealousy to discuss. With Scorpio Decan 3s is probably the worst person that you can betray. You will never hear the end of it. Unfortunately, this loyalty they expect does not work both ways. They can very easily have the odd sexual indiscretion, and you will never, ever know about it. They are superb at covering their tracks. Sometimes they kid themselves that they actually didn't do anything unfaithful at all since they've been drunk or seduced on a break, or not having full sex absolves them in the same way. Yes, they actually believe it. So it must be true. If you uncover a faux pas, that the can 3 can easily hypnotize you into disregarding the evidence that you are seeing with your own eyes and convince you it didn't really happen. You will want to really believe them too, because that sexy Venus ruled Scorpio is simply very hard to stay angry with. They are masters of seduction themselves. They make a few choice decisions in their life and work silently towards them until the mission is accomplished. Their plans are secret because they won't risk anyone nabbing their prize before they get there. They also take quite a long time getting to their goal because they are planning the most risk free strategy for getting there. And they are straight up survival mode. So if the zombie apocalypse happens, they're going to be ready. Their strategic moves and stealth action is also useful in sports or the military. Okay, so examples of these are Robert F. Kennedy, Joe Biden, Condoleezza Rice, Martin Luther, Salvatore Giuliano, sorry, Prince Charles, Frida Lindstedt, Jeff Buckley, Kim Wilde, Petula Clark, Martin Scorsese, Sean Young, Rock Hudson, Whoopi Goldberg, Danny DeVito, Goldie Hawn, Jamie Lee Curtis, Jodie Foster, Larry King, Meg Ryan, Megyn Kelly, Chaos Discovery, Boris Becker, and Billie Jean King. Those are just a few of those Scorpio Decan 3 examples. And we're moving on to from Scorpio to, hold on, we're moving on to the Sagittarians. So, Sagittarians, Decan 1, those are the ones that are born November 22nd to November 30th. They are the Sagittarius Decan 1, and they are ruled by Mercury and Jupiter, a Sagittarius triplicity. So Sagittarius Decan 1 travels through the constellations of the Scorpion, the Wolf, the Kneeling Man, the Serpent Bearer, the Compass, and the Triangle from 0 to 10 degrees Sagittarius. Decan 1 Sagittarians will show up in their typical fashion of being optimistic, open minded, brash, philosophical, curious, and free spirited. As a result, those born under this sign tend to be optimistic, free spirited, and always up for a novel experience. This zodiac sign is famous for being the quintessential adventure seeker. They will be of the zodiac, as they're always aiming to get the most out of life and learn all that there is to learn. With Mercury as one of their ruling signs, the, um, the caduceus and medicine plays a major part with this decan. Ophiuchus and other constellations that fill in the gaps in this decan are all laced with a theme of medicine. This decan does best in the healing and teaching professions because they easily inspire others to improve their life through acquiring wisdom or practicing a healthier diet. The great attraction for foreign cultures that comes with Sagittarius serve these subjects well when looking for herbs or drugs, cures, and enlightenment from far and wide. There's also a fascination with ancient cultures and their healing wisdom, again, dealing with health. So, this decan is medicine all over and also has a deep interest in metaphysics. Mercury has as Hermes, representing part of this decan, gives it a shadow side, since this god could travel between the underworld and the surface world. And also being ruled by Jupiter, the planet of fortune and adventure, they are optimistic, adventurous, independent, non committal, and lucky. Sagittarians, decan one, will be um, I would say they're society's scapegoats, whatever the political leaning of the time is. These natives will take on the collective shadow and be the boogeyman. It's a dirty job, but someone has to do it. So, tropical Sagittarius is not exactly the most celibate of archetypes either. With Jupiter's nymph chasing influence, but unlike the fire sign in general, the sexuality is not so in your face. Towards Antares, at the end of this decan, you get more of the passion and intensity the red giant star is famous for. They are everyone's forbidden fruit and dark, bittersweet cherry. Sagittarian decan 1 may seem quite shady, filled with and, and filled with dark humor laced with irony and sometimes quite sick. Sagittarius decan 1 are natural shamans, forever lurking between the worlds like Mercury, their ruler. People do find it hard to trust them because of their shifty, trickster aura. In business, Sagittarians decan 1 can do very well too. In fact, probably a little too well. With Mercury being the god of merchants, these first decans have to make a special effort to use their powers of persuasion ethically. They can easily abuse the powerful scorpionic aspects of this decan and use them for manipulation and control. The sun will illuminate those with criminal tendencies that surface in this decan. There is the potential of great heroic deeds with this position, but usually only if this person ends up biting the corrupt hand that feeds them. The bravest of them will be the whistleblowers or secret assassins who rid the world of really nasty characters. In this case, taking out one person who causes misery to many might be an honorable act. Unfortunately, some Sun Sagittarians decan ones take the law into their own hands and, in their deranged state of mind, do very dark deeds. Once they have a goal, they are ruthless in their pursuit and very decisive once they get there. When they have no mission in life, no dreams to chase, and no special beloved to seduce, they can get very depressed and self destructive. It is true that the stars in this decan are very challenging, but what doesn't kill them makes them stronger. If they cultivate empathy, then they can be a very positive force for good in the world, especially in slaying dragons. Their talent is great focus and powers of concentration. With this, they can achieve excellence in any field that they choose. So, examples of these people are Winston Churchill, John F. Kennedy, Bruce Lee, Charles Atlas, Lucky Luciano, Pablo Escobar, Billy the Kid, Rose West, Ted Bundy, Eric Menendez, Woody Allen, Ridley Scott, Scarlett Johansson, Anna Nicole Smith, Jimi Hendrix, Miley Cyrus, Tina Turner, Billy Idol, Bette Midler, Billy Connolly, Richard Pryor, Ben Stiller, Imran Khan, Gianni Versace, Mark Twain, and Anders Celsius. Those are some great people there, right? Okay, so moving on to Sagittarius decan 2. Those are the people born December 1st to the 11th. They're Sagittarius decan 2. They're ruled by the moon and Mars and Aries triplicity. The sun undulates through the constellations of the kneeling man, the serpent bearer, the bird of paradise, the octant, and the southern triangle from 10 degrees to 20 degrees Aries. Sagittarius decan 2s will be more fiery and confident than the others of their sign. Disciplined, dependable, a bit controlling, humorous, and loyal in friendship. They are focused on confidence and self expression more so than a typical Sagittarian. They can also be more competitive and motivated to succeed, making them capable of surmounting great feats and besting everyone around them. This Decan too is on this planet with a mission to remind us of the noxus we have buried in our subconscious. They serve to tempt us with the forbidden and hidden fruit of the tree of knowledge and the importance of using it with integrity. It's easy to see why this Decan is one of the most feared of the zodiac. This could result in wonderful revelations, or it could equally send us mad. It is vital for these subjects to keep in contact with nature and to respect natural law because it seems if they do not, they will suffer grave consequences. Nature seems to take a very dim view of these folk, abusing the great power that they so obviously have. It has shades of Eris written all over it. One bite from her golden apple and you could start a Trojan war. Too many greedy bites and you could have a Kundalini awakening that you couldn't handle because you were inadequately grounded. Those who have become entertainers in this decan have that extra magical allure that, added to their talent, makes them almost like super famous. Some of them had so much power over the public that the dark side took them away from us before their time. Look at Princess Diana. She was a good example of this. These folks can be moral crusaders and have great courage because of their convictions. Sagittarius Decan too probably agreed to work for the greater good as guardians of humanity and enlighteners. Souls that picks this Decan to work with pick a very difficult but ultimately the most rewarding path. As none of the stars of the archer lies in this second decan, this is not an easy position for the sun in a world that is constantly conspiring against these natural druids and the wisdom that they hold. But they also knew that there would be danger of being condemned, vilified, and even killed for their attempts to bring occult knowledge into the public domain. These decantus, like Ophiuchus, is the thorn in the side of our very civilized 12-based ordered universe. It is for this reason that the Sagittarius decantu has been so misunderstood and much maligned. Sorry. Sun Sagittarius twos also fail to do has a failure due to letting others confuse them so much that they lose connection to their own superior spiritual guidance system, to nature, making it fatal for them. Once this occurs, these folks can so easily fall down rabbit holes or lose their way. The most successful Sun Sagittarius twos or Decan 2 will have a mission in life or will usually have a great passion for one topic. So examples of these people I mentioned, Princess Diana, Walt Disney, Jean-Luc Godard, Carl Ponti, Maria Callas, Sinead O'Connor, Britney Spears, Ozzy Osbourne, Little Richard, Nicki Minaj, Tyra Banks, Kim Basinger, Julian Moore, John Malkovich, Terry Thatcher, Jeff Bridges, Daryl Hannah, Kirk Douglas, Jim Morrison, Frank Sinatra, Tom Waits, Jose Carreras, Robert Hand, Anna Freud, Anne Cotier, Douglas Fairbanks, and Diego Rivera. And last but not least for tonight, the Sagittarius Decan 3, those born December 12th to the 22nd. They are ruled by Saturn and the Sun, a Leo triplicity. The Sun slithers its way through the constellations of the Serpent Bearer, the Scorpion, the Dragon, the Altar, the Southern Triangle, and the Bird of Paradise from 20 to 30 degrees Leo. Sagittarian Decan 3 might be one of the most difficult decans to be born under in this early 21st century. With the Sun ruling anyone born in the third decan, may be more energetic, fun-loving, charismatic, and self-involved than others of their sign. They focus more on their appearance, reputation, and validation than a typical Sagittarian may be. These people make great performers, especially in front of an audience, often seen as troublemakers, and are often misunderstood, exiled, and tortured for their beliefs. If brought up in a loving family, have access to nature, have an active spiritual life, and are free to express their unique selves, then they are as good as gold. But if not, their dark side is the most treacherous of all. More than any other decan, these folk absolutely cannot function as an inauthentic being. They will see right through any false veneer, right to its very core of a sorcerer's dark soul. This decan 3 doesn't really use words much and often finds it difficult to listen to them. They often just sense things, and this is why they get into trouble. The problem is, a lot of the time, they themselves don't even know why someone gives them the creeps. And this happens, Sagittarius Decan 3 are accused of being rude, antisocial, cold, and even sociopathic. Sagittarians Decan 3 wants to fit in and needs to be loved, so they will feel guilty when they don't find these false buffoons the scintillating company that everyone else seems to. Sagittarians Decans 3 starts to believe that the darkness must originate from within themselves. They don't do small talk and flattery. It's very hard for them to lie about someone's bulging ass because that's just the way it is. Yes, it does look big in that, okay? Sorry, that's what they would say. This is where tropical Sagittarius judgmental and untactful reputation comes from. This decan can serve as a mirror or as a barometer as to the spiritual state of the human race. Like Black Moon Lilith, the lunar apogee, and empty focus, the decans of Ophiuchus are like an empty void that are only as evil as whatever projector is putting in there. Okay, whatever that's projected there. But what is evil, anyways, but our worst fears? Isn't it only fear that makes us lash out in defense? It is vital for this decan to be grounded, pure, and trusting. Sagittarian decan 3s are great at prescribing medicine, but they need to have strong enough that they will not also in turn take any of it themselves. This decan really need to keep as toxic free or toxin free as possible to bring their wonderful earth raising vibration to its full potential. In this present day of Saturn's darkness, ironically, it is this decan 3, when pure, who will make the greatest light workers of the century. These are the spiritual warriors who, when feeling psychically strong, can influence enough minds to cause a massive uprising. They are not frontline Aries types, but they can influence those that are fighting up front. Sagittarian's decantry works in the background, spreading wisdom, shocking us out of complacency, and inspiring us to do something magical with our lives. They are dangerous because they have the power to move many souls into awakening, enough to cause a tsunami of enlightenment that will prove unstoppable once the momentum gets going. It's because these folk are so darn threatening to the real psychopaths and leeches on this planet. Now, do you see why they have been attacked? This is why they have to be controlled. This is why they have to be drugged, belittled, exiled, silenced, gaslit, mind controlled, and made to feel like they have a disorder. For some, sadly, the responsibility can be just too much to be handled, so they zone out with the prescribed medicines. But to those who manage to work their magic without succumbing to these prescribed medicines, we bow down to them in awe. This Saturn rules decan is a great leveler for Sun Sagittarius 3, with a healthy mix of skepticism and hope that people need and admire. Because of this balance, these folk will often be in great demand as teachers and counselors. So, Sagittarian Decan 3s, the future of the human race is in your hands. And examples of these people are Emperor Nero, Steven Spielberg, Benjamin Disraeli, Pope Francis, Mary Queen of Scots, Ludwig van Beethoven, Giacomo Puccini, Dionne Warwick, Frank Zappa, Christina Aguilera, Taylor Swift, Connie Francis, Brad Pitt, Mila Jovovich, Samuel L. Jackson, Beatrice Daly, Jane Fonda, Kiefer Sutherland, Christopher Plummer, Ray Liotta, Jane Austen, Wassily Kandinsky, Gustav Eiffel, Tracy Austin, and Emmanuel Macron. Okay. For more about decans and going into more on your sign, check out darkstarastrology.com for further details. It's great decan explanations. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for the astrology part, and we will move on. All right, so we are going to be doing a tarot reading, and I want you guys to, even if you are in your sign, whether it's Sagittarius or Scorpio, you're pulling a personal card for you and your decan that I mentioned, okay? For me, I'm just pulling it in general for you guys because my sign is neither of these signs, okay? And you're going to be just pulling that one card for the can Scorpio through Sagittarius. Oh, wow. And I have the Nine of Wands. If you look at this, that warrior is there. And they instead, what I see is, it's interesting. They're literally that light worker, that spirit worker, that person that wants to step forward and be that light, be that shine. And to me, all these cards that we pull at on the show always seem so apropos for what's needed for that particular sign or for that particular reading. This one, to me, is all about being that one in the front. Like they said, they're not the Aries front runners. They're more the people that would step forward and from behind and push people forward to do the right thing, to take that step for what the collective needs. And this one, there's so much fruit. If you look at the wands, the Nine of Wands, if you look at this and the way that she has it, all of the flowers blooming in the back, these are things that we have to do. In other words, druids of the earth, shamans of the earth, witches of the earth, we all need to come together and do something to help step forward and be the light workers that this earth needs right now in this day and this time. So for all of you that pull cards for yourself, read what it says and see what it means for you. And I would love to hear some of the results from some of that. So thank you guys all for tonight, for being here. We want to thank David Shee for being on our show tonight. We also have next week, we have, let's see, we have. So there you go. We have Ian Ford for next week, and we'll be working on the Capricorn and Aquarius decans for next week. All right. Again, thank you all for everything. We want to thank Rhonda, even though she's not here. We all thank you for everything. And for everyone in the chat for being here with us. Please like, subscribe, share on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere. We love doing these shows and do want to see you come back next week at 10 p.m. next week. Thank you.